candidates from the Republican and Democratic parties were seen visiting the key states to go to target undecided voters ahead of tomorrow's presidential election. Without further ado, let's take a look to the recording of the latest situation of the United States election campaign provided by our reporters.
More than 28 million Americans reportedly have already cast their ballots in this election. Over the past week, we've seen massive early voting lines in multiple states, part of what's expected.
So, my agenda for today, I, Brian O'Connor, would like to share with each one of you guys. If I'm the one who will be chosen for our next president, I will guarantee you will not regret it. Ladies and gentlemen, every single life in this world are now facing this crazy pandemic, which is COVID-19. My main concern for our beloved country right now is this case keep on rising day by day. If I do have this opportunity to serve and lead my beloved country, my beloved citizen, my beloved family, I will do everything for each one of you guys.
Over the next 4 years, I will make sure that US become the top country in the world. We will improve the country trade and medical supply chains and ultimately end our fight against COVID-19. We will ensure that federal healthcare is protected for all US citizens. And lastly, we will also ensure justice for all citizens of every race, religion, and color, and heard all the complaints of the citizens. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
So just now we have been watching the clip of the latest situation of the election campaign, and we also heard Amira and Lukman voice their manifesto as well as the citizens' thoughts and hopes for their new president. Good morning. Now I broadcast live at one of the polling stations in Pennsylvania. The situation here is very under control, and now with me is one of the voters who has just finished voting. How do you feel after fulfilling your responsibilities as a citizen?
I feel happy to have carried out my responsibilities as a citizen of this country, and I think we need to come out and vote. This election is one of the most important events for all people in these nations to choose our leader correctly.
Okay, so what are your hopes for this election?
I personally agree if Lukman Biden should be selected as our president this year, as everyone has their rights to vote.
Lots of people dream of becoming President of the United States, but to officially run for office, a person needs to meet 3 basic requirements established by the United States Constitution. A presidential candidate must be: the first one is a natural-born citizen, United States citizen from birth. Second one, at least 35 years old, and the last one, resident for at least 14 years, permanently live in the United States. Step 1. Primaries and caucuses. People with similar ideas usually belong to the same political party. The two main parties in the United States are Republican and Democrat. Many people want to be president, They campaign around the country and compete to try to win their party's nomination. In caucuses, party members meet, discuss, and vote for who they think would be the best party candidate. In primaries, party members vote in state election for the candidate they want to represent them in the general election. Step 2. National Conventions and General Election. After the primaries and caucuses, each major party, Democrat and Republican, holds a national convention to select a presidential nominee. The party's presidential nominee announces his or her choice for vice president. The presidential candidates campaign throughout the country to win the support of the general population. On election day, people in every state cast their vote. Step 3. The Electoral College. When people cast their vote, they are actually voting for a group of people called electors. The number of electors each state gets is equal to its total number of senators and representatives in Congress. A total of 538 electors form the Electoral College. Each elector casts one vote following the general election. The candidate who gets 270 votes or more win the elections. The newly elected president and vice president are then inaugurated on January 20.
The first features of presidential system is practice of separation of powers, whereby the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary are three distinguished branches of government. In presidential government, the president and his executives are independent or isolated from the legislature. The government workloads are divided equally among these three branches, and one branch may not interfere with the functions of the other branches. Secondly, there is single executive system, as the head of government is also the head of state. All the executive power is vested in one person and his executive members. Next, the head of government is elected directly by the electorate or people, not by the legislature. As in USA, for example, the president is elected for a fixed term of 4 years. He can serve for maximum of 2 terms. As the chief executive is directly elected by the people, so he is directly responsible for the people. Lastly, the president appoints his own cabinet officers or ministers or heads of government, and they are accountable to him only, not to the legislature.
So now, let's move on to policy making process. In the presidential system, political and administrative powers are divided between the executive, legislative, and also judicial branches. Each one of these branches will serve a different terms of office and different constituencies. So what is the president's job? The president, who is the executive chief of the government, will be chosen by a separate election. The president also will be elected directly by the citizen. The president itself will appoint his cabinet of ministers, and they are not simultaneously members of the legislature, although their appointment may require the advice and consent of the legislative branch. And last but not least, the president will have a great control over their cabinet. How the legislative body work in the presidential system? So next, let's move on to legislative, executive, terms and removal from office. In the presidential system, president and the members of the legislature are separately elected for a given length of time. The president also has no authority to remove the members of the legislature. The premature removal of either legislative member or the president can be initiated